10 years ago, two of my closest friends made a decision. That changed the next decade of their lives. Same city, same age, same amount of money. Both of them received around $50,000 within a few months of each other. And both of them wanted the same thing: freedom. Not yachts, not private jets, just the ordinary kind of freedom. The freedom to worry less, the freedom to sleep at night, the freedom to know that one day work would become optional. One of them bought a rental property. The other one bought index funds. 10 years later, they ended up with almost exactly the same net worth. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what happened between year 1 and year 10. Because when people compare investments, they usually compare returns, charts, percentages, spreadsheets. What nobody talks about is the life. You have to live while those returns are happening. And sometimes, that's the part that matters most. I'm Layla, and in the circle, we don't just look at where people end up. We look at what it costs them to get there. Let's start with Derek. Derek has always been the responsible one. The friend who reads reviews before buying a toaster. The guy who researches hotels 6 months before a vacation. When his grandmother passed and left him $50,000, he didn't rush into anything. He made spreadsheets, and he listened to podcasts. He asked questions. And one answer kept coming up: real estate. His uncle owned rentals. His coworker owned rentals. The guy who cut his hair somehow owned rentals. Everyone seemed to know someone who'd gotten wealthy through property. The stories were always the same. My tenant pays my mortgage. The house doubled in value. I haven't touched my own money in years. So Derek bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a working-class neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just solid. The kind of house people raise families in. 20% down, 30-year mortgage. Tenant moved in within weeks. And for the first time in his adult life, Derek felt like an investor. Meanwhile, Simone did something so boring that nobody remembers the conversation. She opened her brokerage account, bought a total market index fund, set up an automatic monthly contribution of $300, and went back to work on Monday. That's it. No property tours, no negotiations, no mortgage broker. When people asked what she was doing with the inheritance, she'd shrug and say, "Mostly index funds." The conversation usually ended there. Nobody has ever leaned forward with excitement after hearing the words total market index fund. For the first couple of years, Derek looked brilliant. Every month rent arrived. Every month part of the mortgage disappeared. Every month somebody else seemed to be paying for an asset he owned. He loved driving past the house. There it was, a real thing, a building, a roof, a front door. You can't drive past an index fund. You can't point at it. You can't tell your friends, "And see that? I own that." And human beings love things they can see. Simone's account, meanwhile, did what stock market accounts do. Some months it went up. Some months it went down. Some months it did absolutely nothing interesting. At dinner parties, nobody asked about her portfolio. But there was another difference nobody was tracking yet. When Derek's phone rang at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, it was usually a tenant. When Simone's phone rang at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, it was usually a friend asking about brunch on Saturday. At first, Derek didn't think much of it. The calls were part of the deal. A leaking faucet, a broken garbage disposal, a damaged fence, little things. Little things have a way of becoming a lot of things. Here's the problem with rental property conversations. Most people only talk about the rent. They don't talk about everything standing between the rent and the actual profit. One summer, the air conditioning failed. Another year, the water heater died. A tenant moved out unexpectedly, and the property sat empty for 6 weeks. The mortgage didn't care. The insurance company didn't care. The property taxes definitely didn't care. The bills kept arriving, even when the rent didn't. And there was something else nobody warned Derek about. The time. Not enough to ruin his life, just enough to quietly occupy it. A Saturday afternoon here, a Sunday morning there, an evening spent calling contractors, a lunch break spent comparing repair estimates, Nothing dramatic, just 1,000 small claims on his attention, year after year. The house was always asking for a little more. Simone's index fund never called, never texted, never woke her up, never asked for a repair quote. It simply existed in the background while she lived her life. Now, I want to be fair to Derek, because his investment wasn't just a headache. There was something real happening underneath. When Derek put down $50,000, he didn't just buy $50,000 worth of asset. He controlled a $250,000 property. That's leverage, 5-1. When the neighborhood went up in value, Derek earned appreciation on the full amount, not just his down payment. Simone put in $50,000 and controlled $50,000. That's it. And there's something else, a tax strategy called depreciation, where Derek could deduct the building's theoretical wear from his taxable income, even while the property was actually growing in value. These are real advantages, the kind you can't replicate with a brokerage account. Derek was building something. It was just more expensive. In time, in attention, in stress, than the headline number ever suggested. By year 10, both of them had grown their wealth considerably. Derek's property had appreciated. His equity had climbed. He'd been collecting rent the whole time. But after a decade of maintenance, repairs, turnovers, a small renovation, insurance increases, and property tax hikes, his actual cash profit was a fraction of what the original numbers promised. Simone's portfolio, with consistent contributions and compound growth, landed in the same ballpark. Almost identical net worth. But the shape of that wealth was completely different. Derek's money was in one house, one zip code, one neighborhood, whose future he couldn't control. To access any of it, he'd have to sell or borrow. Simone's money was spread across thousands of companies in dozens of countries. She could sell a portion in 3 business days. She could stop contributing for 6 months without a single consequence, and she had spent exactly 0 Saturdays fixing anything. Here's what I think about when I look at Derek and Simone. They made different bets, and both bets paid off more or less. But somewhere around year 4 or 5, something shifted. Derek stopped talking about the property the way he used to. He didn't say it was a mistake. He never said he regretted it. He just stopped bringing it up at dinner. And Simone didn't talk about her portfolio either. She never had. The difference was why. Derek had stopped talking about it because the reality had gotten complicated, because the number looked good on paper, but the life around it had gotten heavy. Simone had nothing to say because there was nothing to manage. Her investment just worked, quietly, in the background, while she showed up for her life. That's not a lesson about real estate being bad. It's not a lesson about index funds being the only answer. It's a lesson about counting everything. The returns, the risk, the time, the stress, the phone calls at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. Because the investment that wins on paper isn't always the investment that fits your life. And the life you're building while the money grows, that's not a footnote. That's the whole point. I'm Layla. In the circle, we count everything because the number at the end is only part of the story. Real stories, smart money.